here first, there's a pod of about half a dozen alien UFO UAPs. You see how they are dotted there on the horizon? Those are UAPs. I don't know if they're from Venus, I don't know if they're from Mars, I don't know if they're interdimensional beings, but you see them right there. Jesse, that looks like hot air balloons. Those are UAPs. They came up from the ocean. Speaking of the ocean, guys, I saw some pictures of houses floating away because of, what's that, Hurricane Helene? Oh my goodness. That is crazy. They literally showed these giant homes floating away, and it just looked like the trippiest, craziest thing. If you're out there and affected by these storms or this hurricane, man, I hope your house is safe. I would imagine every hurricane does something, to ruin a couple houses. And man, you guys get hit with hurricanes all the time, it seems like, down there in Florida. So whether you're on the Gulf side or the Atlantic side, I hope everything is good and well with you. Sean, you had mentioned that there's going to be a lot of storms in your area, probably for the next week or so. So hopefully you can find some opportunity to walk, even if it has to be inside the gym. That's where it's good to have a little gym membership. And there are a lot of gyms nowadays where you can, have a gym membership for in the area of 10, 15 bucks a month. And you can't really beat that, If you don't really have the 10 or 15 bucks a month, a lot of times we have city rec centers. A lot of times there's churches where for literally 3, 4, 5 bucks a month, you can have access to a world-class gym right there in some of these large size, churches around the country. So again, you have a choice. If it's going to rain and it's going to be darn near impossible to walk outside, for the next couple of days, you could take those days off, no doubt about it, or you could decide, hey, I'm going to walk inside and I'm going to walk literally, in place. Or if your backyard's not too soggy, walk in your backyard, and then that way if it does start raining like crazy, you can walk right back inside. But the main thing is every single time it's raining, you don't want to give that, you don't want to look at that as a green light to take the day off. Guys, there's always an easy excuse to take any days off. So when something's difficult, like a hurricane, you're going to look at it and say, hey, no problem, I'll take the day off. But remember, you don't want to get to the point where you're taking 3, 4, 5 days off in a row, because then before you know it, you're going to look up and you're going to be like, shit, I haven't walked in 2 or 3 weeks. You want to make sure that you're constantly walking. And I'm even a proponent and fan of walking more than once a day. Some people hear that and they equate that to working out. Jesse, I don't know if I want to work out at the gym 3 times a day. Guys, walking is not lifting weights. Walking is not running mile after mile. I'm the type that if you were to force me to run, I would probably be able to run about half a mile before my ribs started hurting like crazy, probably even a quarter mile, to be honest with you. And before you know it, I would be trying to walk. So, the main thing to remember is that the reason we choose walking over running, not in all cases, but in most, is simply because walking is something you can do for long periods of time without having to stop. If I run, even if I run past a quarter of a mile, and even if I eclipse half a mile, I'm not going to be able to run more than a mile without practicing. And at my age, even though I probably look a little bit younger than somebody that's 48 years old, the reality is I have 48-year-old hips, knees, ankles, joints, right? And those are things that, when you start to feel pain in, you don't necessarily want to be thumping up and down in a run. With walking, guys, I never really feel any pain. So even if I couldn't walk ever again, I would probably still recommend that I try to find some place where I could swim or do something, you know? At Planet Fitness, we even have a bike for your hands and arms. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen the arm bike or whatever, but you hold these grips and you move like this with both hands, and it can be quite the exercise. I suppose if I couldn't use my legs, I would probably use that as my walking guide. But here's the cool thing. More than likely, if you're watching my show about walking and you're walking with me, more than likely you don't have any foot pain at all, which I'm hoping. And the foot pain that I have slowly but surely gotten used to standing more and more. And it was really the best move I made. So again, sometimes when we're having issues and problems, we should jump into our think tank and come up with solutions. And that's where we kind of figured out that, hey, Jesse, why don't you get a standing desk? Hey, that's a great idea. Standing desk, all of a sudden the backside is healed, and now there's foot issues. What does that mean? Well, think about this. When you cure your overweightedness, because one of these days you are going to be walking and you're going to notice that you're no longer overweight, what's going to happen after that is you're going to get a whole new set of issues. Let's say you lose 30 or 40 pounds and you start to look like that gal that you were 25 years ago when you got out of high school or college. You know, all of a sudden you start dating, and guess what? You're going to open up a whole new can of worms, a whole new can of issues, you know? I don't know if you noticed, but there was a good oversized weight girl. She started walking. Look, she already stopped. Or she was running, excuse me. She already stopped, and now she's stretching down there. You know, if you're one of these folks that you want to kind of do a half run, half walk, that might be the best way to get used to running. You know, go out and run 50 or 100 yards and then continue your walk for the rest of the duration. The next day or the next week, maybe you up that from 50 or 100 yards to, you know, maybe slightly further, and you slowly but surely increment up until you're able to jog. But again, you guys got to remember, if you've been out of the athletic game for 10 or 15 years and now you have aspirations of getting back there, just remember, you're no longer 30 or 35 years old. You know, you might be closer to 45 or 50 or even older. And sometimes the body doesn't necessarily want to do too many jarring type exercises that affect your hips, knees, and joints. You know, so the reality is, walking, once again, whether you like it or not, might be the absolute best option. There was a gal that just rode by in a bicycle, and a lot of people might be thinking, hey, I want to go buy a bike. The only problem I have with bicycles is this, and it's not a major problem. I think if you want to get some good exercise, there's absolutely nothing wrong. Holy moly, that car needs a new muffler or something. So anyway, when you're riding your bike, you would think to yourself, hey, this is the healthiest thing I can possibly do. It sure is healthier than riding or driving in a car, which I totally agree. But if you guys ever look at a person's legs while they're riding a bike, about 50, 60, maybe even 70% of the time, their legs aren't even moving. They're coasting because their bike's already gained momentum, right? Especially if you're going downhill, especially after you finish going uphill, right? You go from uphill and all of a sudden you're on level land, and what are you going to naturally do? Your body's going to say, well, hell, now that I made that hill, let me coast for a while. So with bicycling, it's a weird situation. Would that work long term just as well as walking? Probably. It probably would. But again, if you're trying to do same amounts of time, in other words, instead of a 20-minute walk, I'm going to take a 20-minute bike ride, you're probably only pedaling 4 or 5 minutes of that whole 20-minute time. So again, what I would do if I were you is I would set my gears low so it gives you a challenging revolution, and then I would just constantly try to keep my legs in motion. Now, if you're taking a ride and you want the mental aspect of it, coast all you want. Feel that breeze in your face. What I would actually recommend is if you want to incorporate bike riding, I would actually think about adding that to your walking routine. Sean, you like to lift weights and go to the gym. You do that in addition to your walking routine, you know? I don't know if Elaine still watches, but Elaine was one of those that in the morning she would watch while she was on her stationary bike or while she was doing her exercises or what have you. That is an excellent way to go about biking. If you're on a stationary bike, just consistently keep your legs moving. Now that the weather's starting to get cooler in the morning times, because I think I told you yesterday it's still been hot in the afternoons, but now that it's cooled off in the morning, I'm starting to see a lot more moms and dads with their fur babies, right? A lot of people with the puppies and the dogs. If you've been honestly thinking about getting a cat or a dog and you want to take on a walking routine, I would go with the dog. If you're having one of these situations where you just want a little companionship for after you take your walk, I would go with the cat. Again, I've seen people in apartment complexes back in the day where they would go on walks with their cat and their dog without leashes, and they had some way, somehow, trained their family cat and dog to walk right by their side. It was the weirdest looking thing, but at the same time, it was the neatest looking thing. If any of you are hearing my voice and you've ever had an experience with a friend, family member, or even yourself, where you had a cat like that that would actually walk with you off the leash, let me know. Because when I saw this guy do it in the apartment complex, it was crazy. And I remember I even said, that is so cool that your cat and dog both walk with you. And he said something along the lines, and this was a long time ago, so I'm sure these animals have passed on, but he said something along the lines of, yeah, my dog's 10 years old and my cat's, 11 or 12, and we've been walking together for the last handful of years. And I just thought it was a really cool story. Animals are so smart. If you go on a walk every single day with your dog, I've seen people that have taught their dogs, and in some cases their dogs learn this on their own. Have you ever seen a situation where a dog will go grab its leash? If you have dogs, or if you've ever owned a dog that knew how to go grab its own leash and bring it to you to go on your daily walks, that is super cool. I am so jealous of you. One of these days I'll probably pick up a Fido, and I might just find a way to strap some sort of camera on his collar or on his back. Maybe we'll get a doggy cam or something. One of these days I'll probably go that route. Especially if I keep having family members dropping like flies. Holy moly. It really is shocking, guys. When I was young, other than a couple of great grandparents, I didn't have any friends or family that had passed on. But man, you start getting close to age 50 like I am, and before you know it, you know quite a few friends and family members that are no longer with us. And I'd be willing to bet that a lot of those friends and family members, if they had gotten control of their addictions, if they had gotten control of their food consumption, if they had upped their exercise and lowered their mental stress, I'd be willing to bet at least a handful of those relatives and friends would still very much be on the earth with us. If you love your kids and your grandkids, I would suggest starting a walking routine just based on that love. One of the things that we've been hearing for basically our whole lives is that you can't do this for other people. You have to make a health decision for yourself. But you want to know something? There's a lot of people that don't think too highly of themselves. And if you're one of these folks that you don't think too highly of yourself, well, it's hard to tell a person like that, hey, you got to do this for you. Because if you legitimately don't care, then you legitimately don't care. But if you have sons, if you have daughters, if you have nieces and nephews, and you'd like to see these people grow up and flourish as adults. One of the things that they're going to need as they're gaining experience in life is they're going to need their Uncle Ted. They're going to need their Aunt Patty. They're going to need their mom and dad. So if you can't walk for yourself because you don't think too highly of the man or woman in the mirror, man, you should get out and walk for your family. You know, every single time in the past I would hear these experts go up on the Montel Williams show or on Donahue, and one by one they would all say, you have to make a choice and you have to do it for yourself. Which on one hand makes a lot of sense. You can understand, right? You can't force somebody to work out. It needs to be a choice and they need to be okay with it and they need to do it, right? But at the same time, my God, there are so many people that have stories of losing their mom and dad while they were very young in life. And if you're leaving this earth because of a heart attack or stroke, man, that is just unfortunate. And you're really potentially putting your family behind the eight ball, because it's one thing if you pass away and you leave a life insurance policy and you leave some money to your family that might be struggling. But if they're struggling and all of a sudden they have to find a way to bury you and to do a funeral, situation with you, from what I understand, when you pass away, it can be quite expensive on the family to actually take care of your body. I wonder, and I don't know this or not, but I'm sure some of you guys might, I wonder how many more people nowadays go through cremation than burial. Because with my Uncle Jeff, a lot of us didn't really have the funds to give him a nice coffin and sorts. And so what my grandmother did while she was still alive when my uncle passed away is we all kind of put some money together and we ended up doing the cremation services for him, and thankfully it was a fraction of the cost. One of the things that my grandmother did for me, which I thought was odd at the time, but now I totally appreciate it, is my grandmother actually, as a gift about 20 or 30 years ago, bought me a burial plot. I know it doesn't really sound like the most appealing gift, hey, what are you getting me for my birthday? We got you a burial plot. But at the same time, I'm one of these guys that my burial plot's already paid for, but not my coffin. So one of the things I'll probably try to save up for and purchase over the next decade or so is probably my coffin. But if you're my son and daughter and all of a sudden I drop, if you absolutely have to, I guess cremate me, but I just don't like the idea of my body burning up into ashes. For some reason that creeps me out. I think I'd rather be buried. But you want to know something? It's not like being buried 6 feet underground sounds appealing either. So here's my goal. I want to avoid burial and cremation for as long as I can. I'm willing to do it for myself, but I really also want to do it for my family members. I want to live to see them get nice and old. So, when we were in the summer, me and Sean were kind of joking because I was like, hey, I don't see any kids walking to school. What the hell's going on? And then Sean said, holy moly, Jesse, it's the summer. They're not in school right now. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But you want to know something, Sean? Here we are, now it is the school year, in full bloom all around the country, and I still wouldn't really know it based on the foot traffic outside. These kids are being driven to school nowadays. These kids must be riding their bikes. They're getting dropped off via car or bus. So when you wonder why are kids getting bigger and bigger and obese, the cure is not to give these young kids Wegovy and Manjaro. That is so silly that anybody utters that ever. The cure is to get them out and force them, and I mean literally force them, to walk to school. I don't know why that's so difficult for people to see when you take kids and no longer have them being active. So instead of playing football with their friends outside like we used to, now they're just sitting there on their phone. Instead of walking to school every day, now they're just, not walking. And those 15-minute recesses, if you go out and play, you're probably going to stay in good shape. But how much play and exercise can you get done in a 15-minute recess? I mean, unless I'm wrong, I remember recess periods being 15 or 20 minutes. I don't recall them being an hour. So again, if you eliminate the ride or the walk to school, which apparently it's been eliminated, if you eliminate the walk home, which again, I look out my door in the afternoons, I don't see any kids walking ever. So when the scientists say that they do all of these charts and all this research and development and all this, that, and the other, if you're not noting that people aren't walking the way they used to, well, then I feel like your surveys and your studies are a little bit bogus. Guys, I take you with me every day. I'll even flip you around so you can see what I see. I see a situation where I'm the only one walking. And even when I started walking with you guys, 6 months ago, the people that would walk, the red venter and 2 cents and nickel and dime, Brett, right? All those people, you just don't see them anymore. Why? Well, when the weather gets too hot, people go inside, people decide to quit their walk. And then guess what? When the weather gets cold, you don't necessarily see them come back. So if you really want to know the key to weight loss, in my opinion, you have to get used to walking in uncomfortable weather. Now here's the cool thing, whether it's 100 degrees outside or 75, your legs still have the ability to move and nothing really bothers them. I don't think people ever think about how amazing your legs are. Your legs are literally doing the equivalent of a handstand and walk every single minute that you're moving. Yet I've never had my legs complain. Now don't get me wrong, some of you have legitimate leg pain and foot pain, so I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about me. When I'm walking, I don't feel pain in my legs. I can do this forever. Sean does do this forever. Sometimes Sean has done 10-mile walks. Sean, when you finish those 10-mile walks, there might be a piece of you that says, holy moly, I just burned through 3 or 4 hours. But what else were you going to do? Watch TV? Enjoy your day. Enjoy your youth. You're probably younger right now, Sean, than you were 2 or 3 years ago before you were walking. And by the way, I really noticed that with my channel, that when I started it way back in March or what have you, there were so many people that were like, hey, I'm getting my shoes on, let's go, let's do this. And for those that stayed with me and were able to get their walking routine set in stone, we were able to keep walking during the summer when a lot of brand new venters just decided not to start, right? Because when we did our second 90-day challenge, which was basically during the summer, very few people were saying, hey, I'm here with you. So if you're overweight and you're thinking, hey, I'm gonna wait till New Year's, I'm just guessing there's probably a 50 or 60% chance that when New Year's rolls around, you'll come up with another excuse. And if you know that you're the type that always procrastinates and comes up with excuses, you really need to think about the power of now. There is a lot of power in looking at life like this. The past is gone, the future doesn't exist, all we have is the here and now. So if you're thinking about walking and you're serious, don't tell yourself that you're serious, don't tell others you're serious. Talk is cheap. Put your shoes on and start a walking routine. If you want to start off and go for a 10-mile walk, you're asking for trouble. But if you want to start smart and start off with a 10 or 15-minute walk, you're probably going to be on a pathway for success, because you can't go up from a 10-mile walk. It's just very, very difficult. But you can go up and move up and forward from a 10 or 15-minute walk, right? A 15-minute walk can easily become a 30-minute walk in as few as a couple days to a couple of weeks. So again, if you're a procrastinator, if you're somebody that's looking forward to your New Year's resolution, in theory, especially if you're in bad health, you might not make it until the new year. Listen to your body. It's telling you that you need to do something. Choose to do it now and become a venter, and go outside and start with just a 10 or 15-minute walk, and then let's repeat that process tomorrow. And speaking of tomorrow, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.